When you read the books in the New Testament, specifically the epistles that are written by the Apostle Paul, he starts many of them with the phrase, "Grace and peace to you from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ." Paul's greeting is very important. He wants the readers, he wants us to understand that God's grace is for us, and that when God gives us his grace, when we seek his grace, his peace comes to us. And that's a peace that we are no longer his enemy. That's just like two warring factions. They declare peace. Well, God's grace gives us the peace with him so that we are no longer his enemy. And I'm going to try to start that off with all my videos because that's my goal. My goal is to see you come to the knowledge of Jesus Christ so that you will receive God's grace and that you will have peace with him. You will be at peace with him. You will no longer be his enemy because you have accepted his gift of salvation. So here we go today. Grace and peace to you from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And we are right now in we're going to be in the Psalms for a little bit, and last week I introduced you to David, and like I said last week, David had a heart for God. He prayed to God all the time. He talked to God all the time. He was so in tune with God. He knew who God was, and because of his relationship and all of the prayers that he gave forth, we got the book of Psalms. Last week I said that this week we are going to learn that God knew about all of this before we were born. With that, there are three things that we must know about God. And maybe you've heard these words, maybe you haven't. The first one is that God is omniscient. That means if you spell the word out, it's omniscient. Okay, so what that means is God is all-knowing. The second thing that God is God is omnipresent, meaning he's everywhere, and God is everywhere. And the third thing is omnipotent, omnipotent. All right, that means God is all powerful. Now I'm going to read the first 18 verses of Psalm 139, and we're going to see each one of these attributes in here. So the first one we're going to read about is that God is omniscient. He's all-knowing. And here we go, verses 1 through 6. O Lord, you have examined my heart and know everything about me. You know when I sit or stand. When far away, you know my every thought. You chart the path ahead of me and tell me where to stop and rest. Every moment, you know where I am. You know what I am going to say before I even say it. You both precede and follow me and place your hand of blessing on my head. This is too glorious, too wonderful to believe. What David is saying here is that God is all-knowing. He knows everything about us. He knows when we're going to move, when we're going to stay. He knows what we're going to say. He knows everything that's going to be about us right from the beginning to the end. That's what omnipresent means. It means God is everywhere. Omniscient. God knows everything. He knows it all. The next one is God is, what do I have in my notes here? God is in all places. So we're going to see that in verses 7 through 12. I can never be lost to your spirit. I can never get away from my God. If I go to heaven, you are there. If I go down to the places of the dead, you are there. If I ride the morning winds to the farthest oceans, even there your hand will guide me, your strength will support me. If I try to hide in the darkness, the night becomes light around me. For even darkness cannot hide from God. To you, the night shines as bright as day. Darkness and light are both alike to you. David is saying here that God is everywhere and that we can't escape him. Just because we don't see him doesn't mean he's not there. When you're walking from your house to your car, when you're walking from your car to your work, when you're walking through the store, when you're at the park, when you're at the beach, when you're anywhere, walking the street, doesn't matter. When you're in an airplane flying, it doesn't matter. God is there. God is everywhere. So, in a sense, you are moving through God. If God is everywhere and God is around you, no matter where you go, he's there. You cannot hide from him. And because you cannot hide from him, God is going to work his plan out in you. He wants you to be like him. He wants you to be with him. And God is going to work this plan because he is everywhere, and he's going to be before wherever you go. So just think, if you moved from one city to the next, God was not only in the city you were living in, but God was also in the city you're going to. And God was in the route that you took to get there. And when we realize how God is everywhere, it makes us more conscious of his presence. And when we're conscious of his presence, we don't want to sin. We want to know that we can go to him and talk to him because he's right there with us. Like when we bow our heads in prayer. When you pray to God, he's there listening. You can't escape him, and that's exactly what David is telling us. Now we're going to see the omnipotent God, omnipotent, all-powerful God. I'm going to read verses 13 to 16 on this. You made all the delicate inner parts of my body and knit them together in my mother's womb. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. It is amazing to think about. Your workmanship is marvelous, and how well I know it. You were there while I was being formed in utter seclusion. You saw me before I was born and scheduled each day of my life before I began to breathe. Every day was recorded in your book. What David is telling us there is very simple. God created us. He was there when conception happened, when you were formed in your mother's womb. He was there. He's the one who brought you together. He's the one who took every single molecule that exists to form a human being. He took it all and put it together. And that's the amazing thing about God, is not only did he do it to you, but he did it to countless others that were being created while you were created. That is the sum of God. God is so much everywhere that he can do all that at once and run the universe and sustain the earth and continue to create you. That's what David is telling us. When David sits back and contemplates this, he realizes how powerful God is. And that's just one aspect of his omnipotence, his all-powerfulness. There are many more that we're going to go through as we go along. And verses 17 and 18, to finish this up, is our reaction. This is what when David realizes all this, when he realizes God's all-knowing, his all-presence, his all-power, when David contemplates all that, this is David's response, and this could be ours too. How precious it is, Lord, to realize that you are thinking about me constantly. I can't even count how many times a day your thoughts turn towards me. And when I awaken in the morning, you are still thinking of me. God created you. He loves you. He thinks about you all the time. He wants you to turn to him, to go to him and say, yes, Father, I believe in you, and I want you to help me out. He wants to help you so much. Have a great week. We'll continue this again next week.